The Sky This Month with your host, Dave McDonald.
Welcome to The Sky This Month, and this is September 2024. I'm your host, Dave McDonald, and I want to tell you September is an exciting month. Just look at some of the things we have in store for you on this show. What's up this month? We have the Equinox is coming, and you can't stop it. We'll talk a little bit about that. There are two planets that are in opposition. What planets are they? What does opposition mean? We have the Superstellar Friday at the McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center, and that is Friday, September 6th at 6:30. We'll tell you a little bit more about that. And we have the long-awaited unveiling of the Krista McAuliffe statue that's on the lawn of the State House, and we'll give you a little update on how that went. And then the International Observe the Moon Night is September 14th. It's a Saturday night, and we'll tell you what's happening then. We're 1 billion people plus maybe looking at the same moon on the same night. What's more exciting than that? Well, I'll tell you what. It's the Aerospace Fest program, which is going to be at the McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center on Saturday, September 21st. It's all-day fun from 10:30 to 4 o'clock, and we're going to give you a little more information about that. And then a highlight of the show is a chat with Melissa Edwards. Melissa Edwards is the new executive director of the McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center, and we're going to start the show off with a chat with Melissa. So, Melissa, let me welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you took time out of your busy schedule as you're learning the ropes, and there's so much to learn coming in. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, and how long have you been a fan of space and space exploration?
Yeah, my family was actually very much into space, and I remember at a very young age watching Cosmos, Carl Sagan, big fans of PBS.
Yeah.
And thinking back then a little bit overwhelmed about how big the universe was, but it was definitely something that stuck with me. Always loved everything to do with astronomers and studying the stars. But it really wasn't until I got a job working at the Museum of Flight in Seattle that I became what I call myself as a space nerd. I really have embraced it, because at the Museum of Flight, I was able to meet people who were working and doing things with space every day. I got to meet astronauts. I got to meet people who were basically building rocket ships. And you can't not be super excited by that when you get to meet people who live and breathe and work in space.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And how long were you at the Museum of Flight?
I was very fortunate to be there for 13 years. It was an amazing time. I got to help design programming for students in high school, the Washington Aerospace Scholars Program, which was a partnership with NASA. So I got to help students every summer plan a human mission to Mars, how they were going to get there, what they're going to do there, how they were going to survive it. And then I got to help middle school students also think about careers and pathways in space. I'm very proud of the Michael P. Anderson Memorial Aerospace Program, which honors Michael's legacy. He was a Washington resident, native. And we want students to live the dream that they too can go to space and be like Mike. So that was something I was very proud of.
Very, very cool. And so, speaking of space exploration, what are your thoughts about the future of space exploration as you see it from your perspective and the people that you know and have talked with?
Yeah, I think what's so exciting is to be able to say space is going to be bigger than it ever was. I was not fortunate enough to be around when the Apollo missions were happening. Mm-hmm. So I've only ever watched it on TV and seen old footage. But we're going to come into a period of time where we're going to see people landing again on the moon, and to stay in NASA's terms. And there are going to be not only NASA astronauts in space, but there are private astronauts in space, and private companies that will be building and sending people to low Earth orbit, sending people to the moon and beyond. And even though I've been working in this area for 15 years, I've never felt as sure as I do now that we're on the cusp of that becoming reality. So with Orion, NASA's Orion mission. They've selected their crew. They're working, so closely with SpaceX to, get these new missions going where they're going to be putting people on the moon. And then Blue Origin as well is working on a lunar lander as well. So there's not just one way to get to space. There are multiple ways. And I know it's going to be part of every day for a lot of people.
And that's nice that we have these multiple ways to get there because, as you know, there was a period of time after the space shuttle was shelved that we were totally relying on the Russians.
We were, and they were upping the price every year. A little bit more, another million here, another million there. And I think people don't appreciate how hard space is. I think there's a lot of Americans who are like, we couldn't go to the moon tomorrow if we wanted to, and we can't because we have let that technology fall to the wayside. Yes. And I think what's really important and that NASA understands is that we can't have another setback like that where we take at the end of Apollo, if we had pursued that, we might be on a path to going to Mars now. But because we stepped off, everybody who was in that program all went and did other things and they had to rebuild it from scratch. So I think a lot of companies understand we've got to keep consistent, keep it going. On the technology that we're developing, I believe deeply that the technology we're developing to keep people alive in space is going to benefit the Earth even more because we're going to need that technology to help deal with the climate and things we're dealing with here.
That's so true because there are, needless to say, people who are like, why are we doing this? Why are we spending all this money to do that? And people don't realize that there are people who are alive with MRIs, pacemakers, etc., that technology wouldn't exist or would have existed a lot later had we not gone to the moon. Yeah. And now we're looking, at some point in the future to go to Mars, and that consistency is so important. We can't afford another hiccup if we want to pursue that. And just as an aside, we have a great program at the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center, Mars, the Ultimate Journey. You want to check that out on the website, starhop, starhop.com, and find out the difficulties. This is not going to be an easy task to get to Mars.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned the movie because I want to say one of the things that drew me here was the planetarium. And I think what is so exciting about that kind of experience is it gives you on Earth that same awe and that same moment of just like, wow, this is so epic that you would get if you were in space because the visuals are so strong and the imaging and things like that. And you also get a sense of how big space is. Watching the Earth as it's getting smaller and smaller, somebody's going to Mars, that's a whole different thing than just being floating around the Earth.
Yes, it is. And so you were at the Museum of Flight in Seattle, Washington, which is literally on the other side of the country. Mm-hmm. And so what drew you to Concord over on the East Coast to the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center? Connect the dots from Washington to New Hampshire.
Well, space is the trend, the line that brings those two together. So McCall Shepherd is named after two amazing space pioneers. The first man into space and the first teacher into space. And I just want to continue their legacy by helping other people understand what is so amazing about space, why it calls us, why we want to go to it, and the opportunity to come back to New England. I lived in New England a couple years back and loved it and wanted to come back here again and experience all the joys of the four seasons of New England, but also having an organization like the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center, which is ready to make a next leap up into the next iteration of what it's going to be. And we're excited about the prospect of re-engaging with our audience with this next vision for what we will do, and also the world as it will be with the new connection to space like it never has been in my lifetime. So yes. I'm very excited about that.
Well, that's so awesome, and we're really glad that you're here. So we encourage everybody to come to the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center in Concord, New Hampshire, and enjoy the experience, but meet Melissa and have a chat. We're going to talk about a couple of things in just a little bit where you'll have the opportunity to do that. But speaking of Krista McAuliffe, there was the unveiling of her statue on Monday, September 2nd, which happens to be her birthday. September 2nd is Krista's birthday. She would have been 76 years old. And we, in the studio where we are now recording this at Concord High School, Literally, her classroom where she taught is just several hundred feet away from where we are. And so she has a great legacy, and I'm sure you're familiar with her saying, her motto, "I touch the future, I teach." And so I was there at the unveiling of the statue, and so let's take a little bit of a look at the unveiling of the statue as it took place at the State House on September 2nd.
We're here today to reflect on the enduring legacy of Christa McAuliffe, a figure whose influence on NASA and the broader space exploration community remains a very poignant symbol of courage, of commitment to education, and the inherent risks of space exploration.
I've felt like I've really gotten to know her, not just through the videos and books and photos that I've viewed, but just through the time of reflection that I've had of the inspiration that she's impacted on my life and on so many kids that grew up in that time period. You see, my mom was a teacher, and at that same time, she was just so excited that they had a teacher in space program. And this teacher that was just one of us, she seemed like everybody's teacher, everybody's mother in America. And when you saw her on TV as a little second grader, you just couldn't help but relate to her and think of all the wonderful teachers in your own life that impacted you as a student.
I know, unhesitatingly and without reservation, that Christa would be so proud and humbled by this highest of honors conferred by her home state in her hometown. But she would also think that this honor, to be both disproportionate and way off the mark if it's seen as a personal honor, separate and severed from the representative role that she embraced. It follows that I also know this, unhesitatingly and without reservation. Christa would want me to stress, on her behalf, to insist sternly, in fact. Her family, friends, and students no doubt can attest that she was fully capable of sternly when stern was called for. She would want me to sternly stress that this statue must be seen and appreciated as she hoped to be seen and appreciated, as a classroom teacher representing her profession, as a stand-in for all teachers and all educators. She would want me to encourage everyone who encounters this memorial artwork to remember and appreciate the teachers that inspired or motivated or guided them, the ordinary heroes who are also joyfully and with the same grace and enthusiasm, with the same courage and commitment, embracing every day the extraordinary opportunity to educate them and their children, and who, together, make it possible for this greatest experiment in democracy to continue, this free country in which learning and individuality and progress and the chance to live purposeful and meaningful lives is available to everyone. Committed teachers and public education are the lifeblood of every sustainable democracy.
Here we are at the State House lawn where you just experienced the unveiling of the Christa McAuliffe statue. First teacher to go toward space, and people will be remembering her and her legacy and her inspiration for students and teachers for years and years to come with this statue. I hope you enjoyed those little video clips. And now back to Dave McDonald in the studio. And we have at the McAuliffe Shepard Discovery Center every Friday night. That's the first Friday night of every month. We have a special program called Super Stella Fridays. And the first Friday night in September, which is September 6th, doors open at 6:30 p.m. The program begins at 7, so you want to be sure you're there in time to get your tickets and get in the door. But we have a NASA film being premiered to an asteroid and back. This film is going to be screened, and we are going to have a virtual connection with the director of the film, James Traley, and it's going to be an exciting program. So I know it's short notice if you're catching this at the beginning of the month, but see if you can make it to September 6th, Superstellar Friday at the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center. Then you got a little more notice for this. We have our Aerospace Fest, our annual aeronautic, aviation, space, rocketry. It's just a tremendous time that we're going to have. And Melissa, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what we're expecting on September 21st, which is a Saturday.
Yeah, well, it's a great opportunity for the community to come and meet people who are doing things in space, in aerospace and aviation. We want companies to come and get to meet people and talk about their story, what they're doing. We want opportunities for students and their parents to learn about those prospects, what they could do for their future, and just to learn some cool things about what's happening right now. It's going to be great. We're debuting a new planetarium show, Guardians of the Earth, and again, I can't reiterate how impressive it is to see on our 10K digital planetarium these images in a way that, again, I think are as impressive as you probably could get it if you were in space looking down at the Earth. So yeah, it's going to be a great time, and I'm excited to be there.
And that is just an amazing theater. In fact, as you pointed out, that we have so technologically advanced, it will literally knock your socks off. And come see this premiere of this new show. And the name of the new show is?
And I'm just forgetting. We're Guardians of the Earth, I think.
Right, yep.
Yes,
We
okay.
are guardians.
We are the Guardians, yes.
Well, Melissa, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thanks for sharing a little bit about your past. And again, I encourage everybody to come to the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center and meet our new Executive Director, Melissa Edwards. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Melissa.
thank you so much, Dave. It was great. I loved it.
Good. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Melissa. And next, we want to talk about this show that's kind of behind us. This image behind us is the iconic Stonehenge image. And so another image that we could look at on your screen, you see the sun coming between these two pillars. And so, typically the actual photographs that you see are either from the winter or the summer solstice, not really so much on the equinox. But I just love this image, and I just like talking about the equinox then. So what is the equinox? Well, if you can see my little red laser dot there, we, needless to say, are approaching September. We had the June solstice, and for us in the northern hemisphere, we have the sun's rays hitting more directly on the northern hemisphere. And you see the axis of Earth, which does not change its orientation. It's always pointed in the same direction. The actual pole axis points towards the North Star, actually 3/4 of a degree from where the North Star is. And so we have summer. And now as we advance through July, August, and coming into September, when we reach September 22nd at 8:44 a.m., and that's Eastern Daylight Time. And if you're in another time zone, make your adjustment. But what it is when the sun crosses the equator. And the place on Earth where this is going to happen is out in the South Atlantic. In Africa, that piece that juts out towards the west, well, just under that, it's not going to be on land, it's not going to be anybody's backyard. You might be lucky and be on a cruise boat or something, but that is going to be where the sun will be directly overhead at noontime and crossing the equator. And we call that the equinox. Equinox means equal day, equal night. The truth be told, on that day, it's not actually equal day and equal night. It's a couple days before or after, depending where you are, because the sun actually has 30 minutes of arc, and it takes about 4 minutes for the sun to set and the sun to rise. So when you take all that into consideration, the equinox of equal day, equal night isn't exactly on that day, but you can look that up and see what day particularly that is, if that's of interest to you. But what's of interest to me is the fact that, so sad, summer is now behind, and the sun is going to be getting continually lower and lower in the southern sky until we get to the December solstice, and then good news, the sun will come back again. But be conscious of September 22nd. Get those eggs out. I give you a challenge to get your eggs out and balance an egg on its end. It can be done on the equinox. So you get your eggs out. Send me a picture. My email, you know, is astromannh, astromannh @gmail.com, and I'd love to see your pictures. I've showed you some pictures in the past. Usually I have my students do it, and they're pretty successful to the point where one student says, Mr. McDonald, can I balance an egg on its narrow end? I've never seen anybody do it, but he had the patience. He got down on the floor, and by George, he balanced an egg on the narrow end on the equinox. So there's a fun challenge for you. Love to see your pictures. Then we have another great event happening, and this is literally worldwide. It's International Observe the Moon Night, and everybody around the entire globe will be looking at the same moon on the same night. And it's just kind of, I don't know, sends chills up my spine to think of 1 billion plus people looking at the same moon I'm looking at. And certainly you can see the moon from your backyard, but if you would like to meet a lunar scientist, if you would like to look at the moon through some special binoculars and telescopes, come on over. I invite you to come to Bryant Field in Belmont, New Hampshire. That's on Route 106 in Belmont. And that's Bryant Field. From 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night, we'll be there with telescopes and giveaways, free stuff to give away for you. Have an opportunity to talk to Dr. Andrew Jordan, a lunar scientist, and it's going to be a great time. So if you are elsewhere watching this program, you can go to, as it says, Observe the Moon, moon.nasa.gov/observe, and you can find locations where there will be an event all around the United States and actually beyond. So hope you can make it. Don't forget, September 14th, International Observe the Moon Night. Well, that's some neat information that I hope that you will put together. I mentioned at the top of the show that there are 2 planets in opposition, and I'm going to show you where that's going to happen, tell you a little bit about the stars and constellations that are involved, and what is an opposition anyway. So let's take a look at what the night sky looks like for September. Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Melissa Edwards. I do encourage you to get to the Discovery Center and meet Melissa. She's got some great ideas. I love this image behind me. As I said, it's unlikely this was taken exactly on an equinox, but I like to think it was. It's just, I've been to Stonehenge a couple times, and it's just an amazing sight. Don't forget the equinox, September 22nd, 8:44 a.m. And don't forget to balance your eggs on their end and send me a pic. That's astromannh@gmail.com. All right. Hey, I mentioned there's a couple of planets that are going to be in opposition. What does opposition mean? Well, let's look at this chart and we'll give you an idea. So we're going to talk about Saturn as the first planet in opposition. Here's the Sun. Here is Earth. And then look at this. Opposite the Sun is where Saturn is. Saturn is about 9.5 times further away, so this drawing's not to scale. Saturn's about 9.5 times further away than Earth is from the Sun. Then you see there's a picture of Saturn over here, which is in the opposite side of its orbit in a position we call superior conjunction. But we're not going to worry about that for some time to come. But that is just showing you the completeness of Saturn's orbit. So opposition, opposite the Sun. And basically what happens is when the Sun sets, the planet rises. And that Saturn will be in the sky all night, September 8th. So speaking of Saturn, next slide, we're going to talk about its rings. That's what it's most famous for. So let's go back a year before. In 2023, we have this view of the rings. We're kind of looking at the top down from the northern parts down onto the rings. And the rings are tilted here in the vicinity of 10 or so degrees. Now, in 2024, September to November, we're in the realm of 3.5 to 5 degrees tilt. And so catch your views through a telescope if you want to see the top part of the rings, because in March of 2025, they're going to be edge on. Now you can see in this image here, it shows them being edge on with just a little bit, you're seeing underneath it just a little bit. But for about a week in March 2025, they're going to disappear. You get your telescope out and you look at Saturn. Where'd the rings go? But they will reemerge, and we're going to get to look at the bottom of the rings until that angle maxes out in 2032. So the whole cycle is about 14 years from edge on to edge on. So this is 7 years after 2025. We will see the maximum view underneath the rings, and then the tilting process will happen again. And in another 7 years, in 2039, we'll have an edge-on view again. So Saturn, what opposition also means is it's the best time to look at. Now you're great a couple weeks before, a couple weeks after September 8th, but those are just the maximum times to be able to have a look. Okay, next, we're going to take a peek at where to find Saturn. So you're looking here kind of east, southeast, and this happens to be around 10 o'clock or so, September 8th, but it's a similar view, again, a week before, a week after. And you find the Great Square of Pegasus up in the sky. And if you come down from the right side of the Square of Pegasus, you come down to Saturn. It's very bright, so you can't miss it. And that's where it will be located. So in the next slide, you see what we have here is the imagery or the artwork. You see the Great Square of Pegasus here. And Saturn is located in Aquarius, okay, the water bearer. You can see in this image the water is being poured out, and that's where we find Saturn. So next, here's a challenge for you. Can you find the Great Square of Pegasus up in this area here? Can you find, besides the fact that it's labeled, where Saturn is? Because you're not going to have the lines in the real night sky. So next, here's another treat for you. After we find Saturn easily enough in the sky, another object that is fun to find is the Andromeda Galaxy. And if you find this W shape in the sky, that's the constellation of Cassiopeia, and this narrower angle points in the direction of the Andromeda Galaxy. And if you come off the Great Square of Pegasus here, and you go down from the top a couple of stars and go up a couple of faint stars, it's another way to find the Andromeda Galaxy, which you can just barely see with the unaided eye. So there's a challenge for you for September. And then next, just wanted to show you where Neptune is. Neptune is the other planet that's in opposition in September, and that happens to be in opposition on September 20th. Now, you need at least binoculars, if not at least a small telescope, to be able to see Neptune at all. So I'm going to leave that for you to find a more detailed star map to locate it. But just in general, it's not far from Saturn. You locate Saturn, which you should be good at by now, and then you go down towards your left, underneath what this is called one of the circlets of Pisces. This is one of the fishies of Pisces, which you can notice is underneath the Great Square of Pegasus. So we have the Great Square of Pegasus. Underneath that is one of the fishies in this circlet. Underneath that is where you're going to find Neptune. So opposition is September 20th, and that means it's going to be at its brightest, it's going to be at its closest, it's going to be the best opportunity to find it will be a couple weeks before, a couple weeks after. The next, just to kind of review again, we've got the Great Square of Pegasus, and you find the Andromeda Galaxy, Cassiopeia, that W shape in the sky, that narrower angle points to the Andromeda Galaxy. Binoculars, a small telescope, you'll be wowed looking at this through a telescope, but realize that's 2.5 million light years away. It's the only galaxy that we can see with our unaided eye that's not part of our own galaxy. Pretty cool. So let's just review a bit and check these dates out. So the equinox, September 22nd, 8:44 a.m. Don't forget to balance your eggs. 2 planets are in opposition. Saturn, September 8th. Neptune, September 20th. Don't forget Superstellar Friday is coming up on September 6th, 6:30 at the McCall Shepherd Discovery Center. Don't forget International Observe the Moon Night, September 14th at Bryant Field in Belmont, New Hampshire, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. We'll have telescopes and lunar scientists there. And Aerospace Fest, September 21st at the McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center. So many things going on. It's a great month, so get out and enjoy the greatest show on Earth, and it's found in your own backyard. I'm Dave McDonald for The Sky This Month. I hope you enjoyed the show.